Also, I just can't get over the fact that Isaac slips into the restroom in front of a dozen soldiers and no one has any idea where he went.
Actually, that gives me an idea.
Wait, where are you going? Who does he think I am?
Oh, what the hell?
You're messing with forces you can't possibly understand.
Oh well. Dead Space 2 addresses some of the issues I had with the first game, and the next one might actually be pretty good.
All I can tell you is, the shit is about ready to hit the fan!
Dead Space 3, the 2013 survival horror third-person shooter release developed by Visceral Games and published by Electronic Arts. Jeez, if this review gets any more subtle, I'm gonna need a lozenge.
I think I might have one. Hold on here.
When you start the game, you're given a bit of backstory. It explains that when the original black marker was discovered on Earth, it was thought to contain limitless energy, but unfortunately it caused the spread of necromorph infection. Before it could be hidden away, a religion was built around it called Unitology, hailing Michael Altman, the sole survivor of the marker's discovery and its destroyer. After resources started growing thin, mankind turned to replicating the black marker for its energy, but found that the tool it brought with it wasn't worth it. The copies of the marker were locked away, hidden to be researched, and it's revealed that the first of the markers to be rediscovered was the red marker on Aegis 7, the one Isaac first interacted with in the original Dead Space. It explains that the marker imprinted a blueprint of itself into Isaac's brain, causing EarthGov to capture and torture him to learn the marker's secrets during the beginning of Dead Space 2, revealing the marker Isaac had made himself, which very nearly led to a convergence event with all the necromorphs making their way to it. But Isaac succeeded in destroying it and escaping Titan Station before it was completely wiped out. Isaac is in hiding in an attempt to stay away from the markers. The game then tells you there's a planet that had stopped a marker uprising in its tracks. What a load of preamble. Listen, I don't know about you, but I'm pretty sure destroying the markers have been a pretty good method of stopping these convergence events.
Not good enough, apparently.
You again reprise the role of Isaac... Clarke? Who the fuck is this kid? I want to play as the protagonist of the goddamn series. This is Private Tim Kaufman, and he's in search of something called the Codex. You're introduced to some of the controls before you're attacked by Fodder, a new common necromorph that retains the human shape and clothing of their host, and often use weapons. You retrieve the Codex as the down plane you're in falls over a cliff. You repel from it, inadvertently pulling it down with you. You survive to find a mass of bodies as you're approached by General Mahad, who takes the Codex from you, kills you, deletes the contents of it, then kills himself. We now skip ahead 200 years in the future to hear some unitologist Fruit Loop gab on about how the time of man is at an end.
Is that Jeff Goldblum?
We find Isaac listening to an answering machine message from Ellie saying she's moving on as we see scrawlings all over the place of symbols from the marker. Isaac's mind is obviously still under the influence of the marker, which is kind of odd because I thought that whole thing was actually killing him. But I guess that was resolved when the marker codes were unlocked. It kind of stopped them from spreading, but that doesn't really make any sense. Listen, let's focus on the real point here. It's 500 years in our future, and answering machines still sound like that. The door to Isaac's apartment opens by itself, so he grabs his trusty plasma cutter. He's then attacked by two men that tell him they have a mission for him. As it turns out, Ellie went on this mission before him, and they lost contact. This is when unitologists attack the city, heading for the structure holding the marker. Isaac agrees to help and is given a gun. You are then immediately introduced to your rig, which displays your health, as well as showing you a display of items that you can pick up in front of you. It also features a built-in communicator that projects a screen in front of you of who you're talking to.
This turns out to be a double-edged sword, as despite having a second weapon, which is actually a weapon as opposed to your trusty cutting tool, you have now filled all of your weapon slots. You have 2 weapon slots now instead of 4 like you had in previous games. There's something that appears to be a 3rd weapon slot, but that's actually for something we'll discuss later.
You find out your assailants are members of the last remaining EarthGov battalion, Captain Robert Norton and Sergeant John Carver.
Never mind the fact that the last time EarthGov got involved, they were obsessed with replicating the markers.
You're attacked by unitologists and separated from the group because of your ability to destroy markers, which makes you a direct threat to their plans to bring about another convergence event. Your inventory isn't quite as limited at the start of the game as it is in previous games.
Oh, don't worry, it fills up fast. Though suspiciously, I'm only picking up 1 ammo type despite having 2 guns.
Instead of ammo juggling, you now have ammo that is universal for all your weapons. To compensate for this, some weapons use more ammo per round than others. Isaac controls a lot better than he has in previous games too. Combat feels a lot smoother.
To be perfectly honest, this feels like a step in the right direction. My biggest complaint of the last 2 games were the tedious, endless, repetitive combat segments that seem to fill the second half. This game really seems to be embracing the action elements of the series.
Oh, you say that now. Do you happen to have an extra wall outlet I could use to charge my I told you so?
You come to a busy highway that you have to use stasis to slow down traffic, which causes a spectacular multiple car pileup. You can tell how many stasis charges you have left by a display next to your health meter on your rig. You can use this ability to slow down enemies in combat as well. You come across Jacob Danik, one of the leading Scientologist nutballs and primary antagonist to this game. He has you dragged to your feet as he points out the marker test lab. He sets off charges that blast it open and cause the necromorph signal to spread before attempting to kill you, but you escape and black out.
And then he kills you. Game over. Bye.
He doesn't kill you.
What do you mean he doesn't kill you? You drop into a trash pile directly below him. How busy is this guy? He could probably just drop his gun and kill you.
Anyway, because of the spread of the necromorph infection, the unitologists you face from here on out are now fodders that sprout Las Plagas once you deal so much damage to them. You have to take out the limbs to deal extra damage, and I remind you this because, of course, the game makes sure to remind you.
No, I'm not criticizing this. I get it. I mean, this is for new players, right? I mean, that's what you're trying to do, is you're trying to get more players into this franchise. And if they start with this game, then they wouldn't know that crucial bit of information. So you're just trying to pull them in. You know, the type of people that are normally playing, what, Call of Duty or Battlefield? Yeah, I'm starting to see it.
You now find artifacts, which are special hidden items with backstory attached to them. Searching for these is essential if you want a complete understanding of what is going on in the locations this game visits, as well as a 100% completion rating in all the chapters?
Oh, for fuck's sake.
Good. Good. Let the hate flow through you.
You have to utilize your kinesis beam to put together a train you have to use to get on a gunship to get to Ellie. You can still use it to pull items to you and tear off necromorph limbs to shoot back. Of course, as you're making your way across the train, the unitologists are in pursuit of you, but you manage to get to the ship and via a QuickTime event, you're pulled on safely.
You know, I've always wondered, how can he lay directly on his back with that thing over his spine?
You get to the bridge as they find and head towards an SOS signal coming from a ship called the CMS Roanoke before stumbling directly into a minefield that tears their ship apart. Isaac, being the hyper-competent protagonist all of a sudden, takes charge, starts making orders, and heads off to find a suit. After suiting up and being shot into space, he releases the sealed room from the ship, which triggers a jet boot sequence that involves dodging various debris and more mines.
These sequences suck ass because they are entirely trial and error.
Skill won't help you here, as bits of debris seem to be going in one direction, then whip back in another and kill you.
Hopefully there isn't a lot of this. When you board the Roanoke, you don't find Ellie, but you do find a bench. I'm gonna try and stop myself from making this the main subject of the whole video, but they've changed the way the game handles weapons, suits, and upgrades. Well, I say changed, but what I really mean is ruined! You no longer find credits to use at a store. Instead, you find raw materials and weapon parts and take them to a bench where you can craft weapons. either by combining weapon parts you find or using blueprints. Upgrade weapons by adding upgrade circuits, craft items from raw materials, or store your items in a safe. So now instead of finding schematics that clog up your inventory, you find weapon parts and upgrade circuits that clog it up much faster. Upgrade circuits replace the power nodes in that when you find an upgrade circuit and put it in one of your weapons, it increases one or two attributes of your weapon: damage, reload speed, fire rate, or clip size. And depending on what parts your weapon is made of, you have 2 to 4 slots to put upgrade circuits in for each tool on your weapon. Your alt-fire now shoots a second weapon you have attached to a primary weapon. I recreated the force gun from the first game by adding a grenade launcher as my lower tool. And now to talk about item crafting. You know, it seems like since Minecraft came out and sold a bazillion copies, every game now seems to have some sort of fucking crafting mechanic. You collect various resources throughout the game: scrap metal, semiconductors, transducers, somatic gel, and tungsten. These resources are not only used at the bench for crafting, but also at suit kiosks to upgrade suits, as well as upgrade your rig's armor, health, air capacity, stasis, and kinesis abilities. Suits are unlocked automatically as you progress through the game, and you can switch into them freely. It also allows you to buy resources, weapons, and custom suits with cash. I'm not talking about in-game currency, I'm talking about real money. That's fun, right? Scrap metal is the most common and is used in basically everything, making weapon parts, ammo, and upgrade circuits. Semiconductors are used for upgrading armor and making weapon parts. Transducers upgrade your stasis capabilities as well as create stasis packs. Somatic gel is used to increase your hit points as well as craft med packs. Tungsten is used to craft advanced weapon parts, and tungsten torque bars, which are used to access special storage rooms full of useful items. It's always a good idea to keep one on hand. There are these things called ration seals that you get from scavenger bots that allow you to get out of paying actual money for resources. But not the armor and weapon packs. We'll talk about the scavenger bots after I've calmed down. It's not super necessary to give in to the microtransactions in this game. I didn't have Origin in-game turned on, so I didn't even have access to them. I didn't even know what the ration seals did until near the end of the game. You still run into slashers and leapers, which are still complete bullshit by being able to get surprise hits on you, pretty regularly, and a new dog form of lurker. I guess trying to find a more universal appeal to these games means taking the creepy baby monsters out.
So not survival horror.
They're still pretty regular with their missile-flinging tentacles and tendency to come in groups. You still have the basic quick-time events when any of these enemies are in your face that just boil down to bashing the E key. You know, it's been 3 games of dealing with necromorphs and Isaac still stomps in leaper heads with a successful QTE. Shit, what was that thing that was drilled into our heads since the very first game? Oh yeah, cut off the limbs. Headshots and body shots do basically nothing. Yeah. That's what I thought. After restoring power on the Roanoke, you find Ellie along with Austin Buckle and Jennifer Santos. You also find out that Norton and Ellie are dating.
Ooh.
Yeah. Awkward. Ellie informs you that there's a marker here that has to be stopped, but the trail ends at the Admiral's quarters. To get there, you run into the most annoying aspect of this game, the electrical engineering interface. This is obviously designed for the co-op aspect of this game. You can play with a second player taking the role of John Carver. I would have tried, but I don't have any friends.
I could have played with you.
Oh yeah? Then let's play a game right now. Catch! It's what I thought. The worst part? You can't get 100% completion in this game without playing it with somebody else! Some of the optional missions, and oh yeah, they're optional missions so you can collect extra resources, are co-op only. Back to the electrical engineering interface, or as I'll be referring to it as, the EEI. The EEI is designed for either 2 people or 1 person using the WASD controls and the number pad arrows or mouse simultaneously to activate all of the nodes on the screen. Their controls can't collide with each other and you have limited time. It fucking sucks and I absolutely hate it. It comes up just often enough to make me sick of it, which is exactly more than once. After accessing the Admiral's quarters, Isaac finds writing all over the wall.
Not the only writing on the wall for this game.
You fucking said it, pal. where he falls into some sort of trance, repeating "turn it off." Then explains that the Admiral was obsessed with making a key for an alien machine that controls the markers. Ellie deduces this is the marker homeworld, and you have to find a way onto the planet. You discover a skip that allows you to travel between the 4 ships that are still in one piece. Norton lets you know that he wants to abandon the mission and get Ellie out of here, but you insist that if there's a way to stop the markers, you're going to do it. You head to the CMS Terra Nova to find a shuttle called the CMS Crozier. In order to access the rest of the ship, you have to hack a console. Hacking involves rotating your mouse, then clicking on the blue weak point of the circuit. Doing so 3 times activates whatever it is you're trying to hack. In this case, you locate the shuttle in the aft of the ship and find it's a hunk of hot garbage, as well as unlock the door to give you access to it. As you progress, you come across a scavenger bot. They take up your 3rd weapon slot, and you can deploy them in certain spots signified by a pulsing noise.
The funny part is, I spent a lot of time trying to figure out what that pulsing noise was. I never actually thought to bring the scavenger bot out.
You do some real good work as a reviewer, dumbass.
Hey, fuck you! The game doesn't actually explain it, and when it does, much later, it doesn't even mention the fucking scavenger bot.
10 minutes after you deploy one, you get a notification that your scavenger bot has returned to a bench where you can claim what it has collected. You also come across Exploders, Pregnants, and the Swarm. Exploders have an arm that's just a sack of infected tissue that they use to slam onto their victims, causing an explosion that takes them both out. Pregnants resemble slashers, but their bodies are composed of large sacs that, when punctured, release the Swarm. The Swarm are small insect necromorphs that enter and reanimate dead bodies, creating a fodder to come after you with. This is why it's a good idea to stomp bodies you see lying around.
You find that you have to take a tram to reach the aft of the ship, because of course you do, but you find out that the tram system is blocked, because of course it is.
This leads you to a weird one-off minigame where you have to connect the debris on the tracks. I wouldn't mention something this trivial if it weren't for this creature right here. That's a regenerator. Much like the Hunter and Ubermorph before it, you can sever its limbs and they grow back, except now, instead of just one hassling you, there are a few of them and they can come after you all at once.
I'm not a fan.
It pisses you off, so I love it.
It doesn't attack you yet, but you're locked in the room by the same containment breach detected shit and are attacked by pukers, necromorphs who fire globs of bile at you which slow down your movement. Unfortunately, as you make your way to the tram, you run into the regenerator and have to run like hell. Even worse, you have to wait for the tram to get to you, which means you have to fend him off, and that's not all. The room fills with leapers, and another regenerator shows up.
We're at the shitty second half of this game already? Holy balls, this is going to be a quick review. I might actually have a chance to pick up an early lunch.
You may starve to death.
Once you get on the tram, you have the option to go to the mid or aft station. The mid station has an optional quest where you have to make your way to the top of a tower to find resources checked out by a member of the crew. He set up elaborate traps to stop you from getting to him, including setting charges on the vents to bring necromorphs after you. You find him dead, but there are a lot of things you can use here. The game has a weird save system where it'll autosave to save your progress, and when you save, you essentially save your inventory, and it loads back to an autosave, and all the items, crates, and enemies that you've taken or killed, respectively, are back so you can go after them again. Weapon parts and upgrade circuits don't respawn.
The great part? Spare parts boxes take up room in your inventory too! This game has really jumped the shark in inventory management, and you never have room for anything. You're always leaving shit behind or making runs back to the bench.
The only thing the game does right in this regard is if you've taken damage and your inventory is full, when you pick up a med pack, you automatically use it. Anyway, after reaching the aft of the ship, you find the shuttle, and it's a real piece of shit. You're swarmed by leapers and exploders, and this is where I realized the body limit of the game. See, you have to stomp corpses after you kill them to get their item drops to come out, but the bodies disappear after you've killed 3 more enemies. So getting locked in these arena-style battles inconveniences you even more by the fact that you're getting attacked from all sides, but have to take time during the onslaught to loot bodies or you lose the opportunity.
I mean, I guess you don't really have to loot bodies anyway. I mean, you're constantly getting items, and there's no more credits to save up, so I guess it's really a non-issue. But that does not make this game suck any less.
You put a remote sensor in and refuel the shuttle, but Ellie accidentally initiates it to launch, so you have to get out quickly, and by get out quickly I mean wait for elevators while you fend off for a generator. Then you have to make it out of the chamber and clear the gears that control the bay doors so the shuttle doesn't crash into it. They find the shuttle is missing the port engine. You're now tasked with going to the CMS Greeley to detach an engine that's free-floating in space. Then you head to the Roanoke to pull Navarre parts out of satellites around it while avoiding mines. You construct the flight recorder, but then Norton contacts you privately and reveals his intentions to take everybody home, abandoning the mission. Nobody else is on board with this as they actually want to take the opportunity to stop the markers. You install the navigation parts, board the shuttle, and finish preparations. You head on to Tau Volantis in a flight that takes the lives of most of the red shirts from Norton's ship that brought you here, and then you crash. There's a lot of hullabaloo of shooting down mines and ship parts while avoiding others and staying on a flight path. It's stupid. You wake up in the wreckage with a broken helmet on a frozen planet. You have to stop near fires to keep yourself from freezing to death. You find a body you think may be Ellie until you find a message from her where you see her, Santos, Norton, Carver, and Austin are still alive. You follow a trail of flares to a door that doesn't allow you to continue until you get a snowsuit. While searching for one, you find Austin freezing to death. The group found snowsuits, but there weren't enough for everyone, so Austin made the sacrifice. He tells you there might be more in the basement, but they heard scratching down there, so they didn't risk it. You quickly turn on the heat, but you're too late, he's already dead. You repair the elevator and make your way down to the basement, where you face feeders. Much like the pack, they come at you in a large group, are very weak, and resemble children. They're still incredibly profitable when you take them out in swaths with the force gun. They're actually workers that were eating meat from necromorph flesh, which transformed them. You find a suit kiosk and don an Arctic survival suit before following the trail of flares again. You find the group at a research facility, but as you're meeting up with them, you're attacked by the Snow Beast, a large four-legged beast with retractable tentacles that attacks you by charging you and lashing its tongue at you. Once you deal enough damage to it, it retreats. You find the rest of the group, and Ellie is very happy to see you, which makes Norton very unhappy to see you. This is when Santos breaks the tension and explains that she found research of an attempt to pinpoint the signal of the machine. Because if there was one thing that this outer space-based survival horror series needed, it was a love triangle.
They don't have that in Resident Evil.
Not the good ones, anyway. To make matters worse, the Unitologists show up and try to kill you, but they find they got more than what they bargained for when they have to fight off necromorphs. Even worse yet, you run into another one of these fucking EEIs. I hate these fucking things! Oh yeah, and you're stuck on a drilling platform with a huge out-of-control drill that you have to somehow disable. You find a variant of the necromorph hive mind called the Nexus. Santos tells you that the answers you need are inside of it, and I'm really hoping that's figurative. Unfortunately, it's frozen solid, so you have to power up furnaces, then turn them on in just the right sequence to start thawing it. Santos gives you blueprints for a probe gun to analyze the Nexus, so you run off to a warehouse to find the parts and build it. On the way, you find stalkers, these annoying little screeching bastards that poke their head out before charging towards you and ramming you. If you find yourself without stasis, they absolutely fuck you up. I'm not quite as worked up over the stalkers from this game, being after the second time you deal with them, you have to deal with another EEI. God damn it, I hate these things!
I thought you liked puzzles in these games.
After collecting all the parts you need to make the probe gun, you're attacked by the Snow Beast once again. And once again, after you beat it around for a little while, it retreats. You then assemble the probe gun and take it back to the Nexus that you have to pry open, then get deposited inside with a cage. As you work your way through, firing probes into its nerve clusters, you're attacked by enhanced feeders. As you're lifted out, they zero in on the machine signal. Norton leaves you in the cage and jams the signal from your rig. You get out, but Jacob Danik is waiting for you with Norton and Carver. Oh, just let me fucking guess. Norton's behind this, isn't he? Danik reveals his intention of killing everyone in your group. In response, Norton speaks up about how he was promised a ship. Somebody better pick up that phone because I called it.
Hello?
Anyway, he's about to shoot Norton in the head when Isaac jumps Danik, then tosses a grenade at his feet. Danik uses this opportunity to fuck off as the Nexus shows up, very much alive and very angry.
You fight it until it sucks you into it, where you have to fight off 3 nests. Nests flail around and fire mines at you. In order to defeat them, you have to destroy the 3 yellow pods hanging off of them. After you defeat them, the hive mind spits you up and falls over dead.
Gross.
I hate it when that happens.
If that's not bad enough, Norton freaks out and starts waving a gun around at you and Carver, so you shoot him in the head.
That's really not going to look good, being Isaac has already said to Ellie, let us fight it out. Especially the part where he said, one of us will win.
You make it back to Ellie and let her know what happened. Santos becomes upset that another member of the group has died, and now you're introduced to the climbing segments. Climbing segments just have you rappelling up a rock face trying to avoid falling rock. At least, that's how it starts. They only get worse from here on out, but we'll get into that when it happens. Ellie proceeds to blame Isaac for Norton's death, saying that she asked him to help at first instead of you because you didn't believe in her or your relationship.
Even though from the very moment you and Norton found her, he's been trying to abandon the mission.
She then points out that you were dragged out here by gunpoint.
I don't remember them trying anything else before that.
They didn't.
You find a cargo cage and send it down to the rest of the group so they can make their way up, but they come under attack. In order to find the controls to get them up, you have to do another climbing segment. This one involves fighting lurkers and jumping over gaps in the wall. Then Ellie lets you know they're fine and that she just can't believe that Norton would do that. You come to another climbing segment. This time large slabs of rock are coming down along with a swinging cage you have to use stasis on.
It's not difficult, it's just annoying.
As you get to the top, you activate the cargo cage and Santos explains to you that you need to make a codex. In order to do so, you have to find someone named Rosetta. A fuse blows, so you have to divert power from the lights to the lift with a breaker box without overloading the circuits. Carver and Ellie get off safely, but Santos is unloading her gear as the snow beast attacks and starts yanking on the cargo cage. Isaac intends to rescue her, but Carver cuts the rope so the rock face doesn't get torn off and the rest of the group lives. The snow beast returns and breaks the cliff you're standing on, separating you from Carver and Ellie. After tearing it in half with some fortunately placed harpoons, you have to do another fucking climbing sequence that leads you back to the group, despite the fact that you get separated again almost immediately when a ladder breaks.
This is my life now.
Why are you so surprised? They do this in every Dead Space game.
You find Ellie and Carver, and it turns out you have to assemble Rosetta, which involves you going through the 3 buildings of the research facility to find 4 more pieces. You come across cysts, which are basically living landmines that live in the corruption on the walls and floor. Fortunately, this game gives you a method of neutralizing not only the cysts, but the corruption as a whole. This is also where you confront a Guardian. Guardians are humans that were caught in the corruption.
They have tentacles that attach them to the walls, and they expel single members of the swarm.
Fortunately, by this point, I'd replaced the grenade launcher on my force gun with a rocket launcher, so it took no effort on my part to kill the damn thing.
Turns out rocket launchers are really effective against stationary targets.
On your way to get the last piece of Rosetta, you realize the Unitologists are on the lookout for you. They fire at you from their ship if they spot you, but when you find soldiers on the ground, they have bigger problems, and so do you. Twitchers appear and start tearing them apart, and then they start coming after you. Twitchers are like slashers, except they move incredibly quickly and erratically. Just use stasis on them and remove their limbs, and they'll go down.
None of these enemies are really new or original. It just seems like they were adapted from their original designs to be completely inoffensive to anyone.
Who would find killing babies offensive? Oh.
Once you find all the pieces, you go back to the group and put them in the right order to recreate Rosetta. Once you activate the machines, you find out that the alien civilization native to this world was taken by the markers and the dead were absorbed towards the marker to make a moon. A machine was turned on to freeze the moon to stop it from becoming whole. If the machine gets turned off, everything thaws and convergence happens, not just here, but everywhere the markers have influenced. Isaac takes the codex and Danik appears, holding Isaac at gunpoint, taking it with the intention of turning off the machine.
Isaac activates something to distract the guards holding Ellie and Carver long enough for them to be able to fight them off, but Danik still makes off with the codex. Man, I better get to kill this prick.
Don't hold your breath.
You're probably right. This game is way too obsessed with your relationship with Ellie rather than insignificant things like, oh, I don't know, the markers or the main plot. You and Carver escape the fire, or at least you would if I could tell at all where it's safe to go and where it isn't. It all just looks like it's on fire. I mean, there's a certain path you can take, but it just seems like if you take too long, the whole place goes up. So you have to die a few times to figure out where the path is, and then book it the last time. And then you have to leave Ellie behind. She doesn't follow you. You have to slam the door behind you. Anyway, after you get out of that mess and have an emotional moment with Carver, it's at this point that you're fighting off unitologists with guns and necromorphs, and even more unitologists with rocket launchers on a higher ledge, and you can't just run past this because you have to use a fucking EEI to progress. So if you try to use it while anything is alive, it'll just attack you so you get kicked out of the interface. I hate this shit. You'd think with how Isaac is easier to control and resources are so plentiful that you would just be able to go through and take everything out. But instead of just dealing with a dozen enemies, they increase it threefold at least, and then still make you deal with stupid slow shit like the EEI. This series does not make any fucking sense. And on top of that, they make you do another fucking climbing sequence. To be fair, it's not an actual climbing segment, as you're heading down this time to follow an elevating platform Danik is on. It's really stupid because you have to do this multiple times. You even take an elevator down, but you still have to rappel even further. Who designed this facility? And there's another electrical engineering interface. Fuck! This is where you confront creepers, which are heads much like the heads from Dividers in the previous games that attach themselves to dead bodies to create shamblers. You have to rappel downwards again as a swarm of crawlers make their way up to you. They don't have the baby heads anymore, being this was supposed to be an EA cash cow. How does EA not see what they're doing?
That would actually require caring about the IPs and companies involved with the IPs that they destroy.
But they crawl up to you and explode when in range. You face an alien necromorph that is much larger than any of the other necromorphs you've encountered, and seem to replace brutes in this game as they just try to lunge at you and ram you. You have to rappel again, even further down to face another alien necromorph, this time accompanied with a swarm of crawlers that attempts to pull you into a fan that cuts your line after you get past it, dropping you into a research facility that teaches you the 6 notes of the alien language, and a film strip just so happens to start, letting you know that the machine wasn't just meant to freeze the moon, but to destroy it. You decipher a coded lock using the alien language, which opens a door directly to the machine. Isaac and Carver have another emotional moment, where Isaac has to reassure Carver that he's a good person, despite, alienating his son and killing Santos, and then they spring into action. You confront Danik and Carver grabs the codex, then hands it to you, as you both fall into a weird cavern underground with several markers lying around. You find various locks that use combinations of the 6 tones produced by this ancient civilization. You find platforms that supercharge your kinesis so that you can pick up heavier objects and your enemies while they're still alive. They also supercharge your stasis so you can bring your enemies to a halt. The platforms also allow you to interact with a conduit that allows you to reconfigure the machine. You open it up and apply the codex to activate a platform that allows you to travel to another part of the city that you discover is, in its entirety, the machine. As you make your way around the machine, you confront Medusas. I say confront, but you can actually just kind of coast past them. They shoot mines at you, and you can take out their appendages by shooting the yellow infected spots, but it's not really worth wasting the ammo for something you can just fly past. You do a giant rotating column puzzle with Kinesis to activate another activation terminal, then you return to the conduit to close it and execute it with the codex when you see Danik heading for the heart of the machine to turn it off. As you go to stop him, he contacts you and lets you know that Ellie's still alive and he has her. Because of course he does. She's not even a character. She's just a plot device at this point. Who wrote this shit? You climb up the machine and confront Danik, who is holding Ellie at gunpoint. Isaac tries to convince him to stand down, but instead Carver takes the codex and tosses it to Danik. Danik turns off the machine and gets impaled by falling debris. God damn it!
I told you you wouldn't get the satisfaction.
As the necromorph moon reforms, Ellie and Isaac waste more time by having a romantic moment, up to and including one last kiss, as Isaac and Carver send her to a shuttle to escape so they can finish undoing what Danica started. Before doing so, you're blasted away from the machine onto a crumbling landmass. Carver is still with the machine, but you're the one with the codex. Your task now is to get to the machine before the moon does. During this segment, if you stop to pick up supplies that you need, you die. You make it to the moon as it gets a tentacle wrapped around the machine. You have to fire markers into its eyes with your kinesis beam to fight it. Once you do so, it puts the machine inside itself, so you rip it out, destroying the moon and put the codex back. It's revealed that Isaac and Carver didn't survive, but they were successful in stopping the marker signal as Ellie returns to Earth. In yet another post-credit piece of audio communication, Isaac is heard calling for Ellie. And that's it. That's Dead Space 3. The psychological aspects of the game have been completely gutted in favor of an action-oriented love story. Isaac controls better to lend to the enclosed arena wave after wave of enemy-style battles in the latter half of the games, but it just becomes a chore when they double down on the number of enemies they throw at you. At the end, you're facing a dozen of the brute replacement enemies while also staving off various other enemies. The climbing and jet boot segments are a pain in the ass, and it's not clear what you're even doing. Obstacles move erratically, so it's all trial and error until you figure out the one safe route. The game just feels like it's been oversimplified to appeal to a larger audience, but unfortunately it just becomes so bland that it doesn't stand out from anything else. EA has a horrible knack for doing this, as I pointed out in the Dead Space review. It really spelled out the end of this series when Dead Space 2 sold 2 million copies, so when this game was being made, they just stripped out everything that would be considered unsafe to try and push more units. The upgrade system is awful and doesn't feel like you're actually increasing in firepower at all. Speaking of firepower, the amount of weapon variety seems a little unnecessary since there's such a limit on your power. The sacrifice was made to balance co-op play so you and your partner aren't just dominating everything. I'm sorry, I just don't have a lot of good things to say about this game. I mean, I thought it was going to be great because it controlled easier and the ammo juggling wasn't as big of a deal, but it is way too much of a departure from the rest of the series.
I told you so! Yes! Finally got there!
Funnily enough, there's a DLC mission called Awaken that has you and Carver waking up in an apartment that turns out to be a hallucination as the two of you question how you're still alive. It starts immediately with, you guessed it, a climbing segment that reveals you did destroy the moon. You figure that necromorphs are no longer around, so you decide to look for a ship to get out of here. You and Carver start to experience the influence of the moon being in your head. Is it just me, or does this DLC feel more like Dead Space than the rest of the game, and it's only just started? You find Norton, who is another hallucination, as his body is transformed into a slasher, as the necromorphs just start appearing again. You find yourself pulled into your own mind, being told to take us home and make us whole, where you face shadow feeders like when you face the marker at the end of Dead Space 2. You notice shuttles taking off as you try to get to one for yourself, but you also notice that many of the Unitologist soldiers have survived as well as been driven hopelessly mad. Many of them kill themselves. When you find that Carver has discovered a shuttle, you get attacked by a huge group of necromorphs. Carver tells you were just standing there and that he yelled down to you that the ship needs fuel. You get attacked again, but get on the shuttle to find it's missing the shock drive, that thing that has been allowing the ships to travel so far in these games. Kinda like a warp drive.
Another reviewer is talking about Star Trek.
You take the shuttle to the CMS Terra Nova to find a shock point drive as the other ships had been eradicated by the minefield. Upon entering, you find out that your search has already been attempted, but those who tried were sliced up by a religious zealot who took the engine and hid it in Conneaut Tower at the mid-station. This was a location for an incredibly annoying optional mission earlier in the game, and I really didn't want to revisit it. So, of course, you have to go through all the motions again to get to the rest of the ship, but unfortunately, the voices in your head tell you to lead us, Isaac, which makes you believe that if you take a ship back to Earth, they'll follow. You stumble across a hooded figure removing someone's head before you realize it's another hallucination. Then you hallucinate an attack before taking the tram to Conneaut Tower. After continuously seeing this hooded figure watching you and occasionally attacking you, you start to let Carver know that you don't think leaving is a good idea. Once you find the shock point drive, you're pulled within your own mind again and face this hooded man until you realize you can't damage him, but you can damage the glowing markers around him. The last words you hear are, "Show us the way to Earth, Isaac." So you decide to take the shock point drive to the reactor so you can destroy it. Carver doesn't like this idea. Carver locks you out of the reactor and tells you you need to give it to him. You tell him he has to come out and fight you for it, so the two of you fight and Carver seems to be able to teleport around. After you do so much damage to him, you're absorbed into your own mind once again, where you realize that if you destroy the markers, you're able to temporarily damage the hooded man. Unfortunately, he's able to use stasis on you. Thankfully, you're able to defeat him, but you realize it was all just a distraction. You reconcile with Carver, who never came in the room, then connect the shock point drive to the reactor. In order to generate enough power to use the shock point drive, you have to overload the reactor. Once successfully doing so, you're sent outside for a jet boot segment that's actually intuitive, make it to the cockpit, and jump to Earth, only to find several necromorph moons attacking it. It's a downer ending, but I really like the DLC. It actually visits the psychological aspects of the game, and even most of the hordes of enemies that you face aren't even there. So there you have it, that's my review of Dead Space 3. Are you gonna leave now?
You have failed to fulfill the terms of your sentence. You must now pay with your life. What do you have to say for yourself?
Failed? I played and reviewed all the Dead Space games like you asked. What the fuck do you mean I failed?
You forgot these!
Oh, that's bullshit. Those are shitty spin-offs.
No matter. It's now your time to die!
I forget to tell you about the whole infinite lives thing. If you'd have told me my penalty was death, I would have told you to piss off.
What?
Fucker must not watch too many internet reviewers. We all seem to have crazy powers and gadgets.